Hello and welcome back. In today's video, we are taking a look at an upcoming game called Contingent, which is an action RPG set in late Roman Britannia. Now, late Roman Britannia, for those of you that don't know, is when the Romans moved over to Britain after conquering it. They stayed in there for a bit, then kind of headed back home when things back in Italy started getting a bit rough. So this is the era where I imagine that the Romans are starting to drift back to Italy and are kind of losing their grip on the British Isles overall, which could be a very good setting for a game in my opinion. For this video, I may be using some Roman-themed Mount and Blade footage, or just some normal Mount and Blade footage, because there's not a lot of video footage going about for this game. There are a few screenshots, and then some basic like dev testing videos that I may use, but that's pretty much it. Now, I will say this now, do not expect anything from this game. Do not expect it to be amazing upon release. Don't expect it to do what I said of Kings of Men was going to be like. And I always expect this kind of game to be something along the lines of Kings of Men, which just completely failed. But this is just a quick video, just letting you guys know that it actually exists. They have got quite a big Facebook following already. They've got like maybe about 15,000 likes on their Facebook page, so they are working with quite a good audience. Anyway, let's begin looking at what this game will entail. So it's based on gritty, skill-based combat combined with mass AI warfare, where you can lay siege to fortifications, capture settlements and villages, and pillage supply lines in intense strategic combat. Now, from a first glance, this looks like you're going to be able to do all the things you can do in Mount and Blade, where you can kind of siege castles and things like that. Whereas this is not in a fantasy setting, this is in an actual Britain setting, which means you're going to be fighting real-world battles and things like that. And you're going to have accurate fortifications and castles, which will look really cool. There's an example of one on screen now. I think it would be really awesome to actually play as maybe the native Britons and I don't know, almost lay siege to a Roman castle. Now, that would mean that you'd have to use fairly primitive equipment, maybe some things that you've captured from the Romans, but it would mean that you'd have to really think about how you're going to attack this efficient Roman force. The last line talks about pillaging supply lines. I really like that sort of thing in games because it means you don't actually have to completely fight a war in a battle. You can take out their supply lines and stop them from getting food or enough resources, and that means they're going to kind of be starved out and be forced into a battle where their troops may be weaker as a result. This is a really good thing that should be integrated into Bannerlord, hopefully, when it comes out. So this is the setting of the game. It reads, as the Roman Empire crumbles, so does its infrastructure and control over the Isle of Britannia. Pockets of British-born Romans cling to the remnants of a once glorious rule. Saxons, Picts and Jutes battle over the scraps of what remains. Use your martial prowess to defeat your foes in skill-based combat, command your forces to raid villages, seize strongholds, and ambush your opposition. I think this game setting is very, very clever. Reading about it a little bit more, I'd never really seen anything in this era, and I've never really thought about this era too much, but it must have been a huge power vacuum with all of these Romans who are still fairly strong and have obviously they're all there and will have their Roman efficiency and equipment and that sort of thing. However, there are a lot less of them, and now the Picts and the Saxons are all kind of coming out of where they've been ruled over almost for the past few hundred years and are starting to take back what is theirs. And that could also create a power struggle between the Picts and the Jutes and the Saxons. I think playing as the Romans would be really fun in this because you're going to have to be battling off these people whilst dealing with the decline of your own infrastructure and that sort of thing. But also playing as the other side would be really fun because you can play as the Picts and kind of storm over Hadrian's Wall and take back what used to be yours. You can also do the same with the Saxons, who are very highly oppressed in Roman times, and they would have had a lot taken away from them over the Roman rule. And fighting for all that back would be really fun, and especially if you're going to be able to siege things. I think sieges in this era could be really unique because you don't have those big, because you don't have things like trebuchets and heavy siege equipment. You've really got to use your brain. Sometimes the Romans would build these big earth embankments up the side, and then you'd have tunnel wars going on underneath, that sort of thing. So hopefully we can see something like that in the game. Looking at the combat, it reads, Contingent relies on a tried and tested combat system. By utilizing a directional attack system mixed with advanced combat techniques such as shield bashes alongside a dynamic wound system, you can defeat your foes in a variety of ways. Now, it sounds similar to what most medieval games go for, which is a directional, depending on when you move your mouse, sword swing. So if you move up with your mouse and then swing down, that will be the direction your blade goes. And I think this has been the same with pretty much every medieval combat game that I've experienced. Apart from each one of them usually takes a slightly different take. But the best one today is still Mount and Blade. That has the best combat system. Kingdom Come Deliverance was good, but not that great. But Mount and Blade still holds the top tier for me. I like the idea of having a dynamic wound system. That could be interesting, where if you've wounded your leg, you're going to be slowed down. Or if you've had one arm chopped off, you're probably not going to be able to do much fighting with that arm. For the actual combat, you're going to be able to use a variety of weapons to defeat your enemies. You can wield warhammer spears, swords, bows, throwing axes, and more. Gold can be spent to upgrade your character in each match, from simple tunics and shoddy swords to great swords and rare, expensive Roman Lorica Segmentata. Now, there's always one issue that crops up in every single game that involves this sort of thing, and that is there's two things. There's A, pay to win, and B, the people that have played longer are going to be completely more overpowered than people that have played maybe a few hours. Now, there's ways to fix this, which is ranked multiplayer, or you can kind of throw everyone in at once. But what will happen is you'll have the really good players that have been playing it since the start with like the best armor, and they're basically tanks. And then you'll get the new players that just get completely destroyed, and they cannot even pierce the armor of these really high-ranking players. And finding a solution to that is quite key. I also think the pay-to-win thing, I expect that this game won't be including that, but pay-to-win in this sort of game can be very annoying. Now, the last section talks about strategy. A simple but powerful order system allows you to maneuver your troops into ambushes, mount attacks against the enemy walls and gates with siege engines, ranging from battering rams and catapults to ladders and hooked ropes. So that's the kind of siege equipment that we're going to be getting, the usual battering rams and siege engines. I'm not really sure if they had siege engines back there. I mean, I'm not going to do any research right now, but tell me down in the comments. But not anything advanced, I expect, anyway. They'll probably have quite basic things. But yeah, they would have had catapults and things like that. So I'm not really sure if the picks could be using catapults, but I imagine they'd use ladders and hooked ropes. Obviously, the Romans would have things like scorpions, where they could shoot really basically large arrows out of these sideways bow-shaped siege engines, and would just fire these across, and they pierce shields at ridiculous distances, and they go straight through a person. They were that powerful. Your units think and act with intelligence. They will fight as an intelligence squad, communicating with one another to defeat your opponent. The more skill a squad gains, the more intelligent their behaviour will be. But be careful, even the most experienced units will fall to cowardice if pitted against impossible odds. Your presence will bolster their resolve beyond any other. So this almost sounds like you have an AI squad of X many men, and the better they perform and the more you win matches or things like that, then the more intelligent that the AI that controls them becomes, which is quite a big feature to implement. That's quite clever. I would like to see that. That could be a very good reward system if you're doing well in a match, and might necessarily also be balanced out by what he says at the end, which is where units will still fall to cowardice if pitted against impossible odds. For example, I don't know, a 2 squad versus a 1 experienced squad, that could be quite even, especially if we're going to have matches with multiple squads. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this game is single player or multiplayer. The gist of it is that it's mainly multiplayer, which gives them all the issues of balancing and player numbers and things like that. So hopefully they'll be able to get over that and, give a game that is good and worth their effort. I'll be leaving all the links down in the description for their Steam page, Facebook and website. Just go ahead and check them out if you're interested in Contingent. Anyway guys, I think that'll pretty much wrap it up for today's video on Contingent. I hope you did enjoy it. It was only a quick one just to tell you that it does exist and that this game could be something new, but never trust any of these new games that come up, because sometimes they can be real cash grabs, as we saw for things like King of Kings and Men. that just kind of didn't really go right and had the wrong directors. But just keep an eye on it and invest in it with buying the game when you think the time is right, rather than just buying it all at once because the YouTuber said it might be good. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you in the next battle.